Hi there, let's crochet Jenny.
First, remove the lid. I'll actually use it to store the items I won't need. Here you've got the care instructions along with the yarn. Set aside the smaller yarn skeins for the moment.
You'll need the pink yarn and the hook.
In this little bag, you'll also find the stitch markers. You'll need those too. Set the stuffing aside. Now take the yarn, remove the label, and locate the yarn tail. Place the yarn ball inside the tin. This way the yarn will stay clean and unravel smoothly. It will also help you control the tension in the yarn. Okay, let's begin with the magic ring. I'll demonstrate a hands-only method, although there are plenty methods using a hook. To start off, take the yarn holding the yarn tail with your non-dominant hand and the working yarn with your dominant hand. Place the working yarn over the tail and pinch where they intersect. Now pull the working yarn out of the loop that you've just created and give this new loop a twist to form a cross at the base. Then pull the working yarn through this loop, tightening it until the knot is snug but not too tight. To test the magic ring, pull on the yarn tail, and if your ring tightens up, you've got it right. Ensure that the ring is not too big. This will make it easier to crochet into it. Now grab your hook and insert it into this large loop. To adjust the loop to the size of the hook, pull on the working yarn. The loop should be just the size of the tip of the hook so that it is easy to slide the hook through. To hold your yarn, turn your palm face up and position the yarn on your pinky and ring fingers. Fold the fingers passing the yarn behind and over the middle finger and the pointer. Keep the magic ring on the middle finger and secure the ring with your thumb, leaving space for the hook. Maintain tension in both the working yarn and the ring. In row 1, let's make 6 single stitches. Insert your hook into the ring under both of these strands and grab the working yarn from underneath. Pull the hook out of the ring, forming another loop on the hook that's about the same size as the previous one. Yarn over again, and this time twist the tip of the hook downwards and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. Now you've made your first single stitch. We got 5 more to do. Check the size of the loop on the hook and continue adding the stitches. Put your hook through the ring and grab the working yarn from underneath. Pull the hook out and yarn over again. Twist the tip of the hook and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. Repeat these steps to create 4 more single stitches. Maintain tension in both the working yarn and the ring in order to make it easier to crochet. Keep an eye on the size of the loop on the hook and the loops you're picking up. This way your stitches will be even in size. Once you're done with all 6 stitches, pull on the hook to make a larger loop. This will save our last stitch from falling apart. Here you can see we've got our 6 stitches all lined up. Each stitch has the shape of a V. The largest loop you pulled out with the hook is not considered a stitch. Now let's tighten the magic ring. Get the yarn tail out and pinch the last stitch in the ring. Pull on the yarn tail so that the ring tightens, but not all the way. You can count the stitches by the V's. Now find the second and the third stitch again and place a stitch marker into each one of those. Simply slide the stitch marker under both bars of the V and ensure you're not using the very first V at all. This is going to help you identify the stitches to put your hook through in round 2. Here is our row 1 with 6 single stitches. In round 2, we are going to have to make 6 increases. An increase is typically 2 single stitches made in the same stitch of the previous round. Increases are used to shape our project, and in our case, we need to start widening our circle to shape the head. Let's take a closer look at the formulas in crochet. SC means single crochet stitch. In row 1, you make 6 single stitches. In row 2, INC means increase. You make 6 increases and each increase is 2 stitches. So 6 times 2 equals 12 stitches for row 2. The number in the brackets tells you how many stitches you'll have by the end of the row. The formulas in row 1 and row 2 are relatively simple. However, more complex formulas exist. For example, let's look at row 3. The formula for row 3 reveals numbers within square brackets multiplied by another number, and the final number in the brackets indicates the stitches you should have at the end of the row. What's inside the brackets represents a sequence, which in this case is a single stitch followed by an increase. The sequence is then multiplied by 6, meaning you repeat this sequence 6 times to complete the row. As a result, you will get 18 stitches in that row. Get your yarn in working position, and in row 2 we need to make 6 increases. Put your hook under the first stitch, the one that's not marked. This can be tricky at times because this first stitch gets overly tight. Make sure you have 3 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pick up a loop. Yarn over again and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. This completes the first stitch of the second round. Mark the stitch with a stitch marker to indicate the starting point. Now let's proceed with the increase. Reinsert the hook into the same stitch where the first single crochet was made. Then create another single crochet in that same stitch. That completes our first increase. Now let's move on to the second stitch and work our second increase. Remove the stitch marker and put your hook under the V of the second stitch. Make a single crochet stitch. Always ensure that the loop you're picking up is of the same size as the loop on the hook. Remember to twist the tip of the hook to secure the yarn. Reinsert the hook into the same stitch and work another single stitch. Now that the second increase is complete, let's create the third one into the third stitch. Remove the stitch marker and insert your hook under the V of the third stitch. Work 2 single stitches into this stitch. Now we have completed 3 increases and have 3 more to do.
Once you've completed all of the increases, pull out the hook.
Count the stitches starting with the marker. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Turn your work around and find the yarn tail. Then pinch your project and pull on the yarn tail to ensure that the ring center is nice and tight. In row 3, follow a simple pattern of a single stitch followed by an increase. Remove the stitch marker and make your first single crochet into the first stitch of the previous row. Once you're done with the first stitch, mark it with a stitch marker and move on to making an increase. Locate the next stitch and put your hook through it. Create a single crochet, then reinsert the hook back into the stitch and create another single crochet. This completes our increase. Repeat this sequence 5 more times. By the end of the row, you should have 18 stitches. Once you're done, pull out the hook and count the stitches starting with the stitch marker. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Identify the right side of your crochet project by the presence of only vertical bars. The wrong side will feature both vertical and horizontal bars, forming a distinct texture. You always want to hold your project with the right side facing you. When counting the stitches on the right side of your project, begin by locating the magic ring and the 6 single stitches in row 1. Next, you'll notice that the second row starts with a bump. Directly under this bump is the first stitch of the second round. The stitch corresponds to the hole under the V, similar to the hole under this V, but is the first stitch of the second round. We made an increase in this stitch, so you'll find that 2 posts trace back into this hole. And as you follow along the round, you'll encounter 5 more instances where 2 posts trace back into the same hole, indicating the 6 increases. The first stitch of the third round is a single stitch, so there's just 1 post tracing back into that hole. In the second stitch, you'll find that 2 posts are tracing back into that hole. This is the increase that we've made. Then again, a single stitch and an increase, a single stitch and an increase. By examining the right side of your project, you can accurately count the stitches. This method is essential for identifying any errors. If you discover that you have too few or too many stitches in a row, first identify the mistake by counting the posts. Then pinch the last correct stitch to keep it secure and carefully unravel all the stitches beyond it. Next, reinsert the hook into the small loop just above the stitch you've saved and proceed to complete the round correctly.
Count the rows starting with the magic ring with the 6 single stitches. This is round 1. Then you have round 2 and round 3. If you count on the other side from the bump, you will have the same number of rows.
In row 4, follow a pattern of 2 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this pattern 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. Start by making the first single stitch and mark it with a stitch marker. Then follow along, creating another single stitch, and in the next stitch crochet an increase. Repeat this sequence 5 more times. At this point, your piece may begin to curve inward. Simply adjust it by turning it outwards to ensure that the right side is facing you and the wrong side stays hidden inside the piece. And once you're done, count the stitches to ensure you have 24. In round 5, follow a sequence of 3 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 30 stitches.
Before moving forward, count the stitches. You should have exactly 30.
In round 6, follow a sequence of 4 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 36 stitches. Remember to keep marking off the first stitch of every round. Count the stitches before moving forward. You should have 36. In round 7, crochet 5 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat the sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 42 stitches. Before moving forward, count the stitches. You should have exactly 42. In round 8, crochet 6 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 48 stitches. In rounds 9 and 10, crochet 48 single stitches each. In round 11, crochet 6 single stitches followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 42 stitches. A decrease combines 2 stitches into one to shape our project. Each stitch has a back loop and a front loop. Insert your hook under the front loop of the next stitch, then do the same with the following stitch. You should have 3 loops on your hook, with the back loops remaining untouched. Yarn over and pull the working yarn through the first 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over again and pull the working yarn through the remaining 2 loops on the hook. This completes our decrease. Now locate the next full stitch. You can find the back loops of the stitches that we used for the decrease at the back. And here's our next full stitch. Crochet 6 single stitches starting with this stitch.
Then create another decrease. Count the stitches before moving forward. You should have exactly 42.
In rounds 12 through 14, crochet 42 single stitches each. To fasten off this part of the head, cut the yarn leaving a 3 to 5 inch yarn tail. Pull this yarn tail entirely through the last stitch and thread it through the tapestry needle. Remove the stitch marker. Now skip a stitch in the round, the one where the marker was, and insert your needle into the following stitch. This stitch is intended to mimic the front loop of the stitch. To mimic the back loop, insert your needle between the front and back loops of the last stitch you crocheted and through the back bar of it on the wrong side. Tighten this stitch to ensure it looks like one of the irregular stitches in the round. This completes our fasten off. Start the bottom part of the head with a magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the ring. In round 2, crochet 6 increases. You should have 12 stitches by the end of the round. Once you've completed all of the increases, tighten the magic ring by pulling on the yarn tail and count the stitches to ensure you have exactly 12. In round 3, crochet a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 18 stitches. Before moving forward, count the stitches. You should have exactly 18. In round 4, crochet a sequence of 2 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. Count the stitches and move on to round 5. In round 5, crochet a sequence of 3 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 30 stitches. Gently pull on the sides to flatten the piece. Then count the stitches and move on to round 6. In round 6, crochet 4 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 36 stitches. Keep flattening the piece from round to round and count the stitches before moving on to the next round. In round 7, crochet 5 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 42 stitches. Flatten the piece and count the stitches before moving on to fastening off the piece. Cut the working yarn, leaving a sufficient length to sew this part onto the top part of the head. To measure the correct length, wrap the working yarn around the rim of the piece 3 times. This ensures you have enough yarn to sew the piece onto the other piece. Then cut the yarn and pull it entirely through the last stitch. Thread the yarn tail through the tapestry needle. Remove the stitch marker and perform an invisible fasten off. Skip the next stitch in the round and put your needle through the following stitch. Tighten the stitch to ensure that this fake front loop is about the same size as the other stitches. To complete the fake stitch, guide the needle through the top loops of the stitch you crocheted last and through the back bar of it. Then turn your piece around and secure the yarn additionally by putting it through another back bar of an adjacent stitch. Now is the perfect time to put in the eyes. The eyes come with these sparkly pads which make them shine, and the backings which are used to lock the eyes in place. Now let's find the position for the eyes. Grab your piece and locate the magic ring and the first 6 single stitches. Ensure that the bump of the second row is turned to the side. Then count 7 rows starting with the first one. Insert your hook into any hole between rows 7 and 8 and widen the hole using the hook. Then grab a stitch marker and insert it into this hole as a placeholder. Double check to confirm that the placeholder is between rows 7 and 8. Now count 6 holes to the side and insert your hook into the 7th hole. Use another stitch marker as a placeholder for the second eye. You should have 7 stitches between the eyes. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now let's replace the stitch markers with the eyes. Once that's done, turn your piece inside out and place the backings on each eye. Press firmly to ensure that the backing is secured in place. To create the ruffle edging, you will need the purple yarn, which will be added to the rim of the head. Prepare a slip knot with the purple yarn by holding the yarn tail with your non-dominant hand and the working yarn with your dominant hand. Place the working yarn over the yarn tail and bring the working yarn through the loop you just created. Pull on the loop in the working yarn to tighten the slip knot. Adjust the loop to be slightly larger than the size of the hook. Now set the slip knot aside. Grab your piece. You can tie the yarn tails inside the head so that they don't get in the way. You will work only into the front loops of the stitches in the last round. You will work only in the front loops of the stitches in the last round, leaving the back loops for sewing the bottom part onto the top part. Insert your hook through the front loop of any stitch and place the loop of the slip knot onto the hook. Pull the slip knot all the way through the stitch. Get a hold of the working yarn. Now create a chain stitch to secure this yarn in place. Yarn over and pull the working yarn through the loop on the hook. This will act as the first half double crochet of the round. Next, work 2 half double crochets into each stitch of the round. To create a half double crochet, yarn over, keep this strand on the hook and insert the hook through the next stitch. Use only the front loop. You should now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again and pick up a loop. Now you have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull the working yarn through all 3 loops on the hook. Then create another half double crochet into this same stitch. Yarn over, insert the hook under the same front loop, yarn over again and pick up a loop. Pull the working yarn through all 3 loops on the hook. Continue by making 2 half double crochets into each of the following stitches in the round. Once you're done with all of the half double crochets in the round, find the first post created using the chain stitches and insert your hook into the stitch above it. Yarn over and pull the working yarn through all loops on the hook to complete the ruffle edging. Now cut the working yarn, leaving a 3 to 5 inch yarn tail, and pull the yarn tail entirely through the last stitch. Thread this yarn tail through a tapestry needle, then guide the needle under the next stitch in the round and perform an invisible fasten off. To hide the yarn tail, insert it under the back loop of the adjacent stitch and do the same with the other yarn tail. Hide both yarn tails inside the head and your ruffle edging is complete. To create the thick tentacle, we will start with a chain. First, grab your yarn and create a slip knot. Hold the yarn tail in your non-dominant hand and the working yarn in your dominant hand. Fold the working yarn over the yarn tail and guide the working yarn through the loop you've created. Tighten the knot by pulling on the loop and the working yarn. Ensure that when pulling on the yarn tail, the loop does not adjust. The working yarn should adjust the size of the loop. Adjust the loop to the size of the hook. Get a hold of the yarn. Lay the yarn tail or the knot onto your middle finger and pinch it with your thumb. To create a chain stitch, yarn over and pull the working yarn through the loop on the hook. This completes your first chain stitch. The chain stitch has a shape of a V, with 2 loops in front and 1 back loop, also known as the back bump. Crochet a total of 26 chain stitches. You already have the first one, so you have 25 more to do. Reposition your fingers to hold the chain closer to the hook. Try to keep all the stitches about the same size by maintaining a consistent loop size on the hook. Your chain may start twisting around. Ensure that the right side is facing you and the back bumps are facing away. You can count these chain stitches by the V's. Continue making chain stitches until you have 26. Once you made all 26 chain stitches, start crocheting in the opposite direction. Note that you cannot crochet into the very last chain stitch, as pulling the working yarn through it will result in wrapping the working yarn around the hook even more, and you will not be able to complete a stitch. Locate the second stitch from the hook and insert your hook under the top loop of the stitch, ensuring that the back bump is facing away from you. Insert your hook under the top loop of this chain stitch, yarn over, and pull the hook out of the stitch. You will now have 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over again and complete the stitch by pulling the working yarn through both loops on the hook. This is a regular single stitch. Continue along the entire chain, creating single stitches into each chain stitch in the row. As you progress through the 25 chain stitches, you'll notice the tentacle starts to curl naturally, which is exactly what we want. Once you are done with all of these single stitches, make a chain stitch to complete the round. Cut the working yarn, leaving a 2 to 3 inch yarn tail, and pull this tail completely through the last stitch. We will use these 2 yarn tails to attach the tentacle to the body. You can also shape the tentacle by either curling it more or actually pulling it so that it is a little longer. The process of making a thin tentacle is almost the same as creating the thick one, with the only difference being the stitch used in the second row. For the first row, create 26 chain stitches. Once you're done with the 26 chain stitches, insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, yarn over, and pick up a loop. Pull this loop directly through the loop on the hook. This is called a slip stitch. Create 24 more slip stitches to complete the thin tentacle. Once you're done with the last slip stitch, cut the working yarn, leaving a 3-inch yarn tail, and your thin tentacle is done. Create as many thick and thin tentacles as you like in the colors that you choose. Now let's sew the bottom part of the head to the top part. Align the two parts with the right sides facing outward, and we will work into the front loops on the bottom part and the back loops left from the ruffle edging on the rim of the head. Ensure your yarn tail is emerging between the two loops of the stitch on the bottom part. Insert the needle into the back loop of any stitch on the rim from inside to outside. Then guide the needle through the next stitch on the rim from outside inwards and through the front loop on the bottom part in the same direction. Continue sewing the two pieces together. When guiding the needle from the bottom part to the top part, pass the needle from the center of the piece to the outside. When going from the rim to the bottom part, insert it from the outside to the center. You will need to add the stuffing inside the head, so don't sew it all the way closed. Leave a small opening, add the stuffing, and then complete sewing the entire round. Now is the perfect time to start stuffing the head. Grab the stuffing and spread it out with your fingers to ensure that there are no lumps. Then start packing the stuffing inside the piece. Avoid overstuffing the head. You want the bottom part of the head to stay as flat as possible. Continue sewing the bottom part to the top part of the head. To hide the yarn tail, insert the needle between the ruffle edging and the bottom part, then guide it out through any stitch on the bottom part. Create a fixing stitch by inserting the needle into the adjacent stitch in a row above or below, mimicking the post of a stitch. Guide the needle out through any stitch on the head. Create another fixing stitch to secure the yarn tail even more. Cut the excess yarn and hide the remaining yarn tail inside the head using the tapestry needle. Now let's make the decorative band to go above the ruffle edging. Grab the hot pink yarn and start by creating a chain of around 42 chain stitches. The exact number may vary depending on your yarn tension and the diameter of your piece. Once you have around 40-42 chain stitches, fit this chain right above the ruffle edging to see if it connects. If you need more stitches, add a few extra. If you need fewer stitches, unravel a couple. Adjust until the chain fits perfectly around the head. Once you can connect the two ends of the chain, cut the working yarn leaving a 2 to 3 inch yarn tail. Fit the chain around the head just above the ruffle edging and tie the yarn tails together twice. Then adjust the chain so that it fits perfectly. Then adjust the chain so that it fits perfectly. Thread the yarn tails through the tapestry needle and push the needle into the head right where the knot is. Guide the needle out through any stitch on the body. Once you're happy with how everything looks, cut off the excess yarn tails and use the tapestry needle to hide the remaining yarn. Now let's attach the tentacles to the body. Grab one of the tentacles. Start by threading one of the yarn tails through the needle. Find the position on the head where you want to attach the tentacle. Insert the needle through the stitch at that spot, guiding it out through an adjacent stitch. Remove the yarn needle and tie the yarn tails together twice. Now thread both yarn tails through the needle again and insert the needle into the same stitch where the yarn tail came out. Guide the needle out through any stitch on the body. Once you're happy with how everything looks, cut the excess yarn and hide the remaining yarn inside the body using the tapestry needle. Repeat this process for all of the other tentacles. To make the smile, thread a small piece of yarn through the needle. Find the center of the face and choose a row for the smile. Insert the needle where the smile should start and guide it out where the smile should end. Tie the yarn tails together twice. Make sure the smile isn't too tight. Thread both yarn tails through the needle again and insert the needle back into the stitch where one yarn tail came out. Now guide the needle out through any stitch on the head. Shape the smile with the needle. Once you're happy with it, cut the excess yarn tails and hide them inside the plush using the needle. Now let's make the eye spots. The first eye spot will go between rows 6 and 7, 2 stitches away from the eye. Insert your needle through the back of the head and guide it out through the stitch where the first eye spot should start. Lay a horizontal stitch within that row and guide the needle out one row lower, just below the starting point of this eye spot. Lay another horizontal stitch identical to the first one row lower. Now guide the needle out 2 stitches further to the side and lay another horizontal stitch over the next stitch within the same row. Guide the needle out in the row above and lay an identical horizontal stitch to the one that you've just made. Guide the needle out one row higher to make another horizontal stitch between the 2 pairs of stitches you've made. Repeat this process on the other side using the eyes as a reference to ensure the eye spots are symmetrical. Once done, guide the needle out where the other yarn tail emerges. Tie the yarn tails together twice. Cut the excess yarn and hide the knot inside the head. Congratulations, your Jenny is complete.